Welcome to Cut the Crop, keeping you in the know about everything you grow. Researchers, growers and other interesting folk delivering insights and information on topics ranging from agronomy to profitability. Brought to you by the Foundation for Arable Research.
Hello and welcome to Cut the Crop. I'm Anna Heslop, and in this episode we're going to be discussing Cocksfoot disease management. In recent years, New Zealand has seen quite a big increase in the area of cocksfoot being grown, and that's pretty much related to a reduction in the amount that's being grown in Oregon. And the reason they've stopped growing in Oregon was the identification of a disease called choke, which pretty much chokes the seed head from emerging. But here in New Zealand, in the Upper Plains area, cocksfoot has been suffering a bit over the last few years, and in the last 4 seasons, growers have been battling an unknown disease, and it's been cutting yields back by anything to up to 75%, so not good. My guest today is Richard Chynoweth, and he's here to talk about what research has been done into that disease and what we've learned. So over to you, Richard. What should a cocksfoot crop look like as it's coming into flower?
Yes, cocksfoot, as we get close to flowering and harvest maturity, the cocksfoot plants should still be green. So we see a lot of cocksfoot that's actually been brown, and where the seed head and the stem in particular are dying off coming into harvest, and sometimes that's can be 3 weeks premature than what it should be. So we really want 4 weeks post flowering to get to harvest, and anything prior to that is going to cause a reduction in seed yield. What we really want is the whole thing green, so the leaves are still green, the stem's still green, but in the last 3 to 5 years we've been seeing the leaves die off, even before flowering, and we haven't been seeing pollen scorch on leaves for the last 4 or 5 years. It hasn't been commented about by growers or industry reps. So the leaves have been dying off before even the pollen's been shed. So we really want to keep those as green for as long as possible.
Okay, so this was a bit of a mission, a question what on earth is going on, help. So what did you guys find out last year?
Yeah, so last year was interesting. So we've had this issue where growers have raised that cocksfoot yields have been, like you said, a quarter of what they should be. And that's been going back sort of 4 years now, where there's been a bad year, then a good year and a bad year. So we've done a lot of testing over the time and found a whole lot of potential pathogens, but nothing that we could nail down. So we'd found a whole lot of bacteria, so Pseudomonas and Xanthomonas, and as such we've been applying a lot of copper and other products to try and control bacterial infection. That hasn't been working. So this year we had some trial work where we just put out chemistry that would control a wide range of different pathogens, and some of those included oomycete type products. And by chance, about 10 days after we started our trial work this year, we had a field day at Methven, and the result from some of the material that was collected from there was that Mark Braithwaite had found downy mildew on cocksfoot. And so downy mildew was listed as present in New Zealand, and when we dive into it a bit deeper, fitted all the characteristics. So it was a wet weather disease, and the growers had commented, especially in the Upper Plains, Methven area, that this was more prevalent when it was wet. So that fitted that characteristic, fitted the characteristic that could dramatically reduce seed yield through effectively choking off of the seed itself. And the symptoms that were potentially there fitted. And this was a disease we hadn't even had on our radar at all through the last 4 to 5 years. So ended up that it's actually a new species of downy mildew for New Zealand. Has been recorded on cocksfoot in Canada prior, but hadn't been recorded in New Zealand. So that was the big find. Downy mildews aren't true fungi, so they are an oomycete. They're the same as white blister on radish or late blight in potatoes. So the normal fungicides that we were applying weren't doing the job. They weren't controlling the pathogen. And and obviously the copper and bactericides aren't going to either. So there's lots of things there that all came together in this one season and one little bit of trial work to at least let us know what we were dealing with.
So just stepping back a bit, you said that the downy mildew, which you found was a new one to New Zealand. Do we know, has it been here and we just didn't know, or has it just arrived?
Potentially both. There was historically Cocksfoot seed production on Banks Peninsula that sort of died out as mechanisation happened on the plains, but also some unknown disease. And so we've been able to find this downy mildew on the peninsula, and actually everywhere we've looked on the Canterbury Plain as well, and been able to find plants that are infected by it. So there's potential that it's been here a long time because it's pretty widespread, but even the very first papers that were published suggest it can be carried on seed, and so with increased seed import-export, we could easily have imported it from somewhere. The downside is that it's only actually registered as being present in Canada and India, but is probably present everywhere where Cocksfoot seed is sold, just that the pathologists haven't identified it in those areas.
Does that make it tricky to manage in any way, or does it make it a new organism? How does that impact?
Yeah, we're still working through all those scenarios at the moment, because if we can find it on seed, then the chances are it's been in New Zealand a long time, given its distribution that we've found it in. If we'd found it in one paddock, then that would have gone down the new organism track. It's a new organism because it's not on the list at the moment, but it's so widespread that there's no biosecurity response. Right. And it's probably, there's a good chance it's been here since the early 1900s, just hasn't come through as an issue. And it might be that we're controlling a whole lot of other pathogens in our Cocksfoot now with better chemistry, that we're actually seeing it come through because nothing we've been using has been controlling this class of pathogen.
Okay, so that leads us to the next question. What can we do to control?
Yeah, so it has an interesting life cycle in that it has two stages of infection. So there's a primary infection that occurs in winter, and that infects the leaves that are there at that point in time. That's probably not going to cause us any issues in terms of seed yield loss. It's actually the secondary spread that occurs when those spores that are released are actually splashed up onto the upper tissue through rain and irrigation water. So it's a wet weather disease. It has to have free water on the plants for potentially a period of 10 plus hours for infection to occur. So that's
sounding again the same as your blister and radish.
Yes.
It needs that wet, dewy mornings or irrigation hanging around.
Yes, which is why it sort of fits the characteristics that growers have explained for a long time, that it's these wet years like we've just had, especially on the upper plains where they can get dewy mornings and foggy mornings where that hangs around for a long time. That's this both require free water. Both stages of the life cycle require free water to encourage infection and especially movement up the plant. So we can identify the periods of risk. That's the first one. There's also, secondly, there's a wide range of fungicides that actually are active on that family of pathogens now. It's not like we're reliant, when we started white blister work 10 years ago, reliant on metalaxyl. So what we've got to do this year is actually work out products that are better than others. So trial work last year identified that Bravo chlorothalonil was good, as was Phoenix, and both of them have good activity on the oomocyte type pathogens. But there's a wide range of others that we use for white blister and radish and late blight and potatoes that are also should be active and potentially have better withholding period issues and things like that we need to investigate. So there's a number of things in there that we can look at. This year's trial, we started applying fungicides at the plant growth regulator timing, and that's about when the secondary infection will be occurring. So it doesn't look like we have to worry about the primary infection. That's probably going to happen every year. And if we do, then we're looking at even autumn fungicide application, maybe winter. So we'll do some trial work this year to see if that is needed, but gut feel and the way we've gone this year looks like we can probably just apply from that secondary infection onwards. So about PGR timing. So Yeah, and like this year's trials, we've had, 4 times increase in yield over the untreated up near Methven, double at Wakanui. So, yeah, we've had some pretty good responses from just controlling in that spring timeframe.
So that's been quite a win.
Yes, it's there's some very happy people that we can do that as opposed to Cocksfoot yields being 1 to 200 kilos. We're now looking at 1,000 kilos again, and actually being profitable in that system again.
Yeah, there were definitely some people who were looking at chucking Cocksfoot completely out of the system.
There were, and even just late applications from flowering onwards seem to do a pretty good job for some of them. They at least recovered their crop for this season, so that was really, really positive.
In summary, there was a mystery disease in Cocksfoot that was impacting on yields.
Yes.
There's been research going for several years, and last year in this harvest season we have identified the disease.
Yes.
Which is downy mildew, but it's a new to New Zealand identified downy mildew.
Yes.
We've found at least 1 or 2 chemicals that will manage it.
Yes.
And going forward, we're going to be looking for another range of control options.
Yeah, I think we can identify periods that are high risk for infection to occur. So we can identify when you might need to look at applying something. And we can hopefully identify products that are just as good or better than the products we've applied this summer, and hopefully still be able to get around some of the residue issues that they possess.
Cool. Thanks very much, Richard. So Cocksfoot growers, good news. Thanks for listening and have a great day on the farm.
Thanks for tuning in to Cut the Crop, presented to you by FAR. If you'd like to know more about any of the topics discussed or have any suggestions for future topics, go to www.cutthecrop.co.nz.